I'm with UNHCR. Thank you to our partners, Fragomen and Talent Beyond Boundaries, and colleagues at UNHCR for putting our session together. This session will be recorded. The link will be made available. So please pay attention. This event will move swiftly and be full of useful and inspiring information. We know that you are busy people, and in virtual events, the moment you are bored, you'll do emails or Zoom to another event. And pay attention because we have important work to do together. We're delighted that so many companies have joined us to learn about safe employment pathways to provide new homes for talented workers who are also refugees. To make an important distinction at the start, this webinar is not about hiring refugees who are already living in your communities. That work to integrate newcomers is very important. But the topic today is how to improve your company's workforce with dynamic new talent who have not yet found their way to safety. Why are we here? Such hiring will grow overall protection for refugees, keep faith with countries of first asylum, and build a positive narrative about refugees as contributors. We want to grow safe pathways so that fewer will take dangerous journeys. We want our publics and your shareholders to see that this is well managed and provides mutual benefits. We want your companies to see that it's the right thing to do and the smart thing to join this growing global movement and make it a new normal, because the logic, the fairness, and the value in all senses of that word is evident. Who is here today? While we have many important observers from international organizations, NGOs, foundations, think tanks, governments, and so many others, this event is for employers to learn how it works. We have over 70 companies registered, many from Europe, as we're reaching out to you from that time zone, but others from Australia to California. We have the largest companies in the world, dozens of major global corporations, but also companies of all sizes, including those who have pioneered using organized, safe channels to hire top talent who are refugees. With due respect to those global scale corporations with hundreds of thousands of employees, some of these small firms, including ones you will hear from today, have already hired more refugees in this way than all of you combined. That can change. We have companies from tech, finance, e-commerce, grocery, manufacturing, retail, healthcare, elder care, hospitality, logistics, and so forth. These companies hire people with PhDs, degrees in business and software coding, drivers, cleaners, teachers, butchers, plumbers, nurses, delivery staff, accountants, and so on. One thing this pandemic has taught us: don't be too smug about our definition of who is an essential worker. If you could put up the agenda for a moment, please, Mariana. So during our session today, opening words of welcome and support will be short, and the learning and action session in the middle will be given primacy of place. The discussion session is for employers and their networks. We will be happy to try to respond to questions and comments from other observers via the chat or follow-up correspondence. What is our goal today? This event is designed to move from information sharing and awareness raising to support, and then to action, hiring refugees, and then to changing the template, becoming advocates to build the systems necessary to enable refugees to do what they so desperately want to do on a large scale, contribute to their communities, provide safety for their families, and use their skills and talents. As we conclude, we will tell you how to start hiring and give you the contacts you need to do so. And we will tell you how your organization can join the advocacy and implementation networks that will convince your companies, your peers, your communities, and your government to help you build these bridges and to get out of the way of your progress. You can take the agenda down, Mariana. The politics of building this new, fairer approach are difficult, but the underlying trends, millions displaced from their homes, and shortages of labor and skills in virtually every sector, virtually every developed economy, those trends are more powerful than politics. So one tool solves two problems: safe, managed employment pathways that use, rather than waste, the dynamic skill motivation of refugee workers. The supply is sadly very large. The demand is, fortunately, very large. The obstacles are real. They are all within our power to overcome, and they are being overcome, as you will shortly hear. With your help, doing the right thing and doing the smart thing will become second nature. I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Michael Schotter, Director, Migration and Home Affairs of the European Commission. Michael.
Thank you very much, David, and I'll try and be as brief as I can be because I know we need to get to the real discussion. But just a few words from my side. Thank you very much for the invitation. This is a great initiative, and it chimes also with the emphasis that we gave in the pact, the new pact on migration and asylum that was adopted 1 year ago by the Commission. We gave a lot of emphasis there to the importance of legal pathways to protection. And of course, amongst those legal pathways is this idea of promoting complementary pathways linked to work. And we set this out in a recommendation on legal pathways to protection in the EU. And here I will say that we took inspiration from the UNHCR because we're convinced that putting in place such legal labor pathways is the right thing to do. And I think that there's a real business case that can be made here. We can have a real win-win, a triple win-win, if I can put it that way, in the sense that the companies can benefit, the refugees can benefit, and our society and economy can benefit as well. So it's a model that I think that is very attractive. So in the EU, we will continue our advocacy in this sense, and the Commission, in that regard, will organise a dedicated meeting on complementary pathways for work in November, and we will be discussing their labour pathways for refugees with the member states. And the aim is, of course, to advance on this topic within the EU. And I want to, nevertheless, though, just ground this discussion a little bit in some of the issues that we see we need to face up to. On the first point I would like to make is that there's a competence issue that we have in the EU. So we have to work with the member states here, very much so, because it's really the competence for admitting people to the territory lies with the member states themselves. We can encourage, facilitate from our side, but we have to work with the member states here. So this is going to have to be a joint undertaking, if I can put it that way. And also we need to we need to confront and overcome, I would say, the legal issues that are there. There may well be legal issues related to status, so it'll be one thing that we need to look into, but I'm sure that we can solve these issues, and in so doing, we will set ourselves up for this winning approach. And I'm in that regard really pleased to see here so many business representatives. It's obvious that labour pathways can only be successful if there is a demand on the side of the companies and employers. At the same time, we need to do this in close cooperation, for the reasons I've just indicated, with the national administrations, because they're the ones in charge of granting the relevant residence permits. They're the ones in charge of admission. But we've got to fix up this cooperation, and we will do what we can from our side. In that regard, I should just mention the funding support that we've made available by our Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund. So we've got 6 projects on complementary pathways, including on labour pathways, that are recently been selected for funding, with the aim of promoting the admission of refugees and building capacity in the member states. So we look forward to the start of these projects, and we trust that they will help create more appetite for this promising way ahead. One other thing I just wanted to mention as well, looking ahead, a bit of a teaser, later we will be proposing, also as announced in the pact, to revise the current legislation in the area of legal migration. So for third country workers of different skills levels, we want to further facilitate the procedures to obtain a permit to come to the EU. And we also want to improve the intra-EU mobility for workers already in the EU. And in addition to that, we are looking into setting up an EU talent pool for third country skilled workers, which would operate as a kind of EU-wide platform for international recruitment. I think all of these are relevant for the discussion ahead. But let me just finish now by saying thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate through this welcome and support slot. But also thank you to David, to you and the whole UNHCR team for bringing us together today to discuss such an important and useful innovation, I think, in this area. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And the support of the Commission is absolutely invaluable in weaving all the complicated parts together. Once the pathways are built, they'll seem normal and natural, but the building takes some work. Melissa Fama is Acting Director General, Refugee Affairs Branch with the Government of Canada. Over to you, Melissa.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today to help open the discussion on employment pathways for refugees. I'd like to thank the UNHCR, Talent Beyond Boundaries, and Fragomen for convening such an impressive group of private sector leaders from around the world. You're all here today because of your potential to have a global impact on refugee labor mobility. And today, you'll be learning about the most exciting talent pool in the global market. We've all seen the recent and shocking events in Afghanistan, and it reminds us of the growing and urgent protection needs of Afghans and other refugees in need of safety and their need for a better life with opportunity and dignity. This has underscored the fact that what the world needs right now is innovative thinking, leadership, and a willingness to test new protection pathways for refugees. In 2019, Canada committed to admitting up to 500 skilled refugees and their families to Canada via the Economic Mobility Pathways Project. This commitment will be delivered in 2 stages, with up to 150 skilled refugees and their families welcome to Canada between now and June 2022, and 350 skilled refugees and their families starting in July 2022. Canada already welcomes up to 36,000 refugees every year through our refugee resettlement programs, and we are adding to our humanitarian agenda a concerted effort to recognize refugee talents and skills by opening up our economic pathways to them, even if they're missing certain things like documentation that is normally required to apply. Canada is blessed with a business sector that has already seen the value in recruiting refugees and building their businesses and growing their communities. Today, we have our very own Glenhaven Manor on the call today, a small company that specializes in elder care in the province of Nova Scotia that has been employing and welcoming refugees via Canada's Economic Mobility Pathways program. It's no surprise that Canada's Atlantic region is punching above its weight on the international stage to find solutions to meet its labor market demands. Canada has also been preparing the groundwork for the creation of a new global task force on refugee labor mobility. The task force has already had a number of promising meetings with leaders in industry, and we are looking for private sector partners to lead this pioneering work. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today and hoping to see many of those on the call become global leaders in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Sasha Chanoff is Executive Director of Refuge Point and will have the last word before the business pitch.
David, thanks so much. And thank you to UNHCR, Talent Beyond Boundaries, and Fragomen for this really unique moment that you've brought us together for. I think it's not too much to say that we have arrived at a distinct moment in history with more than 1% of humanity displaced. These are issues now that Canada has led on, but are of global concern and will continue to be. So it's clear that the actions that we take today can resonate far into the future. And it's a real honor for Refuge Point to be here together with all of you to figure out how we can be most effective and most productive in terms of increasing the workforce, expanding opportunities for refugees, and at the same time, keeping that idea of refugee protection at the center of what we do. Refuge Point is an organization that focuses on finding solutions for the most at-risk refugees. We do that in concert with Canadians, with the Canadian government, with the US and other governments, by resettling refugees in life-threatening circumstances to those countries where they can rebuild their lives. So when Canada reached out to us and asked us to engage in this labor mobility pilot project with our caseload in Kenya of refugees from across East Africa, Congo, Somalia, South Sudan, and other locations, we were eager to do that. We were eager to do that because we thought that it would expand opportunities for refugees, and indeed it has. And we're so pleased to see Glenhaven Manor here. They came over to Kenya and interviewed the first batch of refugees that we introduced to them, and many have started arriving and are now integrating and working productively. One of the things that we found so profound about this opportunity for labor mobility is that in our general work finding refugees who are the most at risk, the questions we ask them in order to help them to resettle to countries where they can rebuild their lives are questions based on their story of persecution, on what they've gone through, on their experiences of danger and threat and flight. And when we start conversations not from that perspective, but from the perspective, as we have with labor mobility, about what are your skills, what are your strengths, who are you, and what can you contribute, we've seen these incredible transformations in people, because these conversations essentially are rooted in dignity. They're rooted in an understanding of the whole person and not on just someone who has gone through horrific circumstances. And we've seen people open up. Some have said after the interviews that we've conducted with them, this was the best day of my life since I fled my home because I feel that I'm heard and I'm understood. So labor mobility, as we all know, is a win-win situation. We have opportunities to connect refugees with experience and skills to labor shortages in Canada and around the world. I would just highlight a few things that I think are extraordinarily important to keep in mind as we move forward with labor mobility. And these are points that we've highlighted and that the Canadian government has really started addressing and has addressed with the minister's announcement recently. But those include the importance of expanding the idea of family composition. When Refuge Point works in the resettlement space, there are many families that are large, that are not necessarily just a couple of children and the parents, but have unaccompanied children with them or others. And I hope that labor mobility will incorporate an expanded sense of family composition so that we can find more employees for the companies that need them. In addition to that, we need funds to support integration, and we need funds to support the settlement services so people have an effective pathway to be as productive as possible. So we're pleased to see that these things are happening. But I would say as we move forward with this, and with all the companies that are here today, and with all the people that are interested in this, let's keep in mind this global moment of displacement. And let's keep in mind not only that we have to find these pathways for those whose skills match the employer's needs, but that we need to keep in mind the protection needs of refugees broadly. So Refuge Point is advocating for a kind of one-for-one policy, where as countries begin opening up slots for labor mobility, they increase their resettlement slots. Canada has certainly done that, and labor mobility is additional. But we're concerned that other governments in other countries might want to just focus on labor mobility at potentially the expense of those who need resettlement as a life-saving solution. So we hope that we can all join together with the idea that as we expand labor mobility, let's also expand pathways for those who are fleeing from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Ethiopia, from Myanmar, and from other places where they need desperately to find safety and a new hope for a new life. So thank you everybody for joining. We're again honored to be here. And David, it's always a pleasure to be with you on these calls.
Thank you, Michael, Melissa, and Sasha. It's now the time for the business pitch. Over to John Cameron, co-founder of Talent Beyond Boundaries, and Maria Brizar, UK Director at Talent Beyond Boundaries. Take it away.
Hi there. So I'm John Cameron, co-founder of Talent Beyond Boundaries. Thank you, David and Sasha and the other speakers. Talent Beyond Boundaries TBB for short. Now, this is not a picture of me. I wish it was young and beautiful, but in fact, I would not want to change places with her, and none of us would. She is one of TBB's candidates, well-trained professionals with skills which are in short supply around the world, a health professional in her case, but who are trapped in a hopeless limbo, unable to fully practice their skills, second-class citizens with no future for themselves or their families. I became aware of this crazy situation of in-demand skills going to waste 5 or 6 years ago. I'd sold my international fixed trading software company a few years beforehand and got into philanthropy. So my first impulse was to find whatever organization was helping people use their skills to get themselves out through international employment and give them some money. I was shocked to discover that while the idea had been talked about, nobody was actually doing it. So I started on trying to get something going. Shortly after, I met up with my co-founders, Mary Louise and Bruce Cohen in Washington, DC, who had a similar experience to me and had already started something up called TBB. We met up eventually and decided to join forces under that banner. So the refugee crisis is a global tragedy, but we're not here today to pull on your heartstrings. Well, not maybe just a little, but as we will show you, this is not charity. This is a genuine business opportunity. After selling my company, I was invited onto the board of Iress, an Australian-based multi-billion-dollar global software company where I've served for over 10 years. Talent is always in short supply. And when I talked to our CEO, Andrew Walsh, about the sort of talent we had available at TBB, he jumped at the opportunity. Would have slide 2, please. Here we are. Here's Andrew with Tarek, the very first person in the world to come in through TBB's skilled employment pathway for refugees. You'll meet both of them soon. Since then, Iress has continued hiring through us. Now, everyone tells you not to read your slides, but I'm going to break the rules and read this one from Andrew Walsh. On one side of the world, there are men and women in desperate situations. They're educated, they have skills, but they're stuck in limbo. On the other side of the world, there are people like me. I lead a technology company making software for the financial services industry. We're constantly looking to find the best people and enough of the best people to help us continue to grow. What if, by solving one problem, we could help alleviate the other? So now I'm going to hand over to Marina Brizar to tell you in detail how we and you can solve that problem. A win-win, a win for your business and a win for the refugees you hire. Marina.
Thank you, John, and to you all for being here today. It is a real pleasure to be speaking today, not least because working with Talent Beyond Boundaries really allows my life to come full circle. I was born in Sarajevo, and the war forced my family and I to live through a siege and through refugee camps until we were resettled by UNHCR and IOM to Australia. Hence the Australian accent, but I am the poster child for the UK program. I'm a product of humanitarian resettlement and know its worth because I am where I am and who I am because of that journey. However, within 6 months of arriving to Australia, my dad secured a job as a telecommunications engineer at Vodafone. And I vividly remember a discussion that my parents had where my dad basically said, if only I'd found a job, we wouldn't have lived through a siege, through refugee camps. We'd live with purpose and dignity as we are now. That's what really stuck with me And that is why I'm so passionate about this work, about this project, and about creating an ecosystem to make it work. So I'm here to tell you 3 things, and it is based on the principles that you see on the screen. So labour mobility is a solution that is employer-led, it is skilled-based, and it spans the source and destination countries. It's an end-to-end solution. But really, the message is, number 1, the talent is there and it is growing. Number 2, we make the process easy for you for this to be as close to standard international recruitment as possible. And number 3, the time is now. Sasha said it, we are in a moment in history and it is time to seize it. We can only do it with your support. So to the first point, TBB's work revolves around the talent catalogue. The talent catalogue is a software and a database which now has over 30,000 registrants who represent over 150 occupations. From archaeologists to management consultants, butchers to software engineers, and everything in between. Basically, if you have the need, we are confident that we can fill that need. The talent is remarkable. We will speak to some candidates today, and I think that they are their best advocates, because what we have heard from many employers is that they are surprised, and that may be because there is a preconception or perhaps a burden that comes with the label of being a refugee. Only yesterday, I got a text message from an employer in the UK who hired a HR professional and who arrived last Friday, just finished her self-isolation. She said, I'm absolutely loving Jana. Amazing work ethic, picking systems up well, asked lots of relevant questions and she's just getting it. It's landing, registering, it's just refreshing. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better team member. This is after 3 days of work. Sadly, the talent pool is growing. We've all seen the shocking scenes and the displacement tragedy in Afghanistan, and that is one reason why registrations to the talent catalogue have increased. With so many talented and skilled professional women and men who have had to flee the country, hundreds have signed up to the talent catalogue in the last few weeks in the hope of securing a job, and in doing so, securing a future of safety and the ability to reach their potential. To the second point about process. We exist to make displaced talent mobility as closely aligned as standard international recruitment as possible. John has said it and I reiterate it, this is not charity. This is an opportunity to secure both an impressive, committed and diverse colleague while offering that person and their family a pathway to a durable solution and a secure future. In every jurisdiction, we have negotiated safeguards so that in the case of a worst case scenario, being employment or family breakdown, there are options that will still allow candidates to access that durable solution that they so deserve. We know that this is a viable solution, and that's backed up by the fact that 94% of employers who have already hired say that they would consider doing it again. One of those, as John said, is Andrew Walsh, who we'll be speaking with shortly, as well as Wayne Shaw, who will be part of our Q&A. So we will let them do the talking on the business case from a business perspective, but this is a proven solution and one we invite you to enjoy with us. Now to the third point, time is now. We are calling on you to volunteer and to make this win-win solution part of your business as usual. The other week we had a session, a global session talking about communications and engagement and outreach, and someone asked, what is the vision of success? One of our UK trustees said, I would love to just imagine a boardroom where people are talking about workforce planning and it says local hires, international hires, recent graduates and displaced talent mobility. We would like this to become business as usual. The more support, the more cases we build now, the easier that will be to make come true. So at this point, we have pilots in Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And of those pilots, we're looking at moving at least 700 people in the next approximately 2 years. That's 700 primary applicants plus their families. In addition to that, we have also secured the AMIF contract for the European Commission together with IOM and Fragomen to open up in Portugal, Ireland and Belgium as a starting point to start to conquer the EU and the member states there, as well as the United States, where we've recently hired a mobilization director, and of course, New Zealand. Just this week in the UK, we welcomed 26 professionals to the UK. 24 nurses, an IT professional and a HR professional. A further 9 are arriving this Saturday. Engaging displaced talent mobility again is seizing an opportunity, but the scenes at the airport and the lives that are changed on entering this new phase and this new chapter of people's life is a remarkable milestone to be part of and to be working towards together. So, on the message that this should be as close to international recruitment as possible, here we outline the process. So it starts with the employer. This is an employer-led process. An employer will identify a role or roles and say, this is what I'm looking for. TBB will then go to our talent catalogue, intake and shortlist candidates and present it to the employer. If the employer is satisfied with the profiles that are selected, they will nominate candidates to take through to a competitive recruitment process, which TBB support. So we have managed recruitment processes that include everything from one-way interviews up to 7 two-way interviews, codility tests, videos of cooking and butchering and everything in between. It must be a remote recruitment process for this displaced talent mobility to work. Once the offer and the requirements are met, we proceed with visa applications. In all the jurisdictions that we have mentioned before where we have pilots, we work with skilled visa options. So EMPP through Canada, a series of skilled visas and a labour agreement in Australia, and the skilled worker visa as well as the health and care visa in the UK at this point. Once candidates arrive, we help them with resettlement, leaning on partners who are already doing such important work in the country of destination. And then finally, we provide post-arrival support to candidates, but more importantly, their families. Often we find that the primary applicant, who is the person going to work, meeting colleagues and driving this purpose, is the most empowered person and they're taken out of their home. So we really wrap around the family to make sure that this is a solution that everyone is engaging with and everyone is benefiting from. So my final message is that you have the power. Displaced talent mobility starts with you as the employer. Together, we can move more people. And to repeat something that has been said over and over again, it is the smart thing to do, it is the right thing to do. That is actually something that came from Andrew Walsh. So we might start our Q&A here. So Andrew Walsh is the CEO of the tech company providing software to financial services industries. It is the company that John alluded to called Iress. So Andrew, Iress was the first company to hire through TBB. In your view, what's the business case for hiring refugee talent from overseas?
Marina, the business case for hiring refugee talent is actually pretty simple, and there are 2 aspects that I draw attention to. The first is that we are interested in high quartile talent wherever we can find it, and we work in software engineering, and there is a talent shortage that isn't an exclusive Australian problem. It's actually a global problem. We can find talent, but we're actually looking for high quartile talent. And some years ago, we internalized our recruitment so that we don't rely on third-party agencies. And after doing that, we opened our eyes to wherever we could find talent globally. And so we're in the practice of already recruiting from overseas. And what we saw in this this TBV opportunity was a talent pool, and we hadn't turned our mind to it before. It was something that, as John said, he introduced, but it provided us access to talent where we weren't looking. So in our recruitment process, we're interested in talent pools wherever we can find them, and TBV represents another talent pool. So if we can find great candidates that contribute to what we've got to do, then that's where we will look. And so in that way, very simple. The other aspect of what we should include in the business case, which is not as quantifiable as finding talent to do the work we need to do, is the goodwill effect of what this exercise has had within the business. And this wasn't an objective. This was a bonus, and probably one that we massively underestimated. And the goodwill or the sense that all of our people could have firsthand having impact on someone's life was more real than any other activity we could participate in within communities that we deal in. What has surprised me is how far-reaching refugee impacts are, and we talk about, you know, in these days we think about what stereotypes of refugees might be. What surprised me was how far-reaching refugee status could go, and it affected every corner of our organisation.
Fantastic. I remember when you had your first arrivals, I think the hashtag #OneIress was trending because the employees were so moved and motivated to just preach about what their company is doing and walking the walk. So that's amazing. So you mentioned the recruitment process. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the hiring process was like with TBV?
Well, for us, no different. It is like we would deal with any other third-party agency, and I think that the process that is today is quite different to what the process has been, and the process has been fine-tuned, improved, and today would say that it's no different to any other international recruitment, and I think that makes it even more accessible. So we have been in the practice of remote recruitment, interviewing process, testing, and interviewing and all that's involved, and that is exactly what's involved in the TBV process. So what is far different today than what has been in the past is timeliness. And so in candidates gone by, we were waiting for timeframes around visa applications and approvals, and in addition to the actual relocation. Today, that is not a problem. So we've recruited TBV candidates into Australia and into the UK, and that process is incredibly streamlined to be no different to what it would be with any international relocation.
Fantastic. And speaking of recruitment and successful recruitment, we're now going to turn to Tarek Muller, a software engineer originally from Syria, who was the first candidate to move on a skilled pathway through Talent Beyond Boundaries. So Tarek, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you connected with TBV.
Thanks, Marina. Thanks everyone for being here. Like being here, it's like you are part of at least interested in helping people. So this is amazing. Thanks everyone. So my name Tarek, software developer, work with Iress, based in Melbourne. In Melbourne office for Iress. I work with a fantastic team there. How I meet TBV, it's a long story. So it started from email. I received it from one of my friends living in Canada. I don't know how he heard about TBV, but he sent me an email about an invitation that there is something will hold in Lebanon, where I was living. And he told me that this organization is started working in Lebanon to help people there to find a good job outside of Lebanon. So I tried to contact them. So I started contacting them, and it was like, I think, first days for TBV there in Lebanon. And for Syrian living in Lebanon, you need any opportunity to escape from the country, because like for Lebanese, it's very hard. So you can't imagine as a Syrian how much it's difficult. Like there is a lot of challenges. It's not easy to find a job, and even if you find a job, you are working illegally. Like for me, I was working in a tech company, but my work title in government, it was like cleaner. So this is how bad it's there. So you need any opportunity to leave the country, try to for me, like I was trying to find a scholarship, try to find a job, try to find anything. So when my friend told me about TPB, I said, okay, it's like good. I will try to contact them and see like how they can help. So I started with TPB, and yeah, like it was like 2 years before moving to Australia, and the process, it took a bit longer because like it was like at the first was just TPB started in Lebanon, and they helped us in how writing CV and finding a job, doing interviews. So it was a longer process. I don't think it's like a good time to talk about the process.
And we met at the visa process. I remember I was handling your immigration application. So we first met by email, and meeting you at the airport was really very special. But your life has changed a lot since then. So do you mind sharing what moving through TPB's program and setting up your life in Australia has meant for you, and how your life has changed working with Iress?
Okay, so I moved to Australia since 2.5 years, and I think everyone life changed since 2.5 years because like COVID-19. So second thing, beside my like getting wet, a lot of things changed. Like I can say now after 2.5 years, I settled. More confident about myself. I married, for example. This is like big change. So a lot of things changed. Like actually, it's a change for me. It's a change from someone trying to find a hope to someone like doing like giving more like hopes for people. For example, like because like for me, like you know, like when you say like about any person have a lot of energy and want like to help the community, want to help the people around you, but when you are in Lebanon or in like for me also in Syria, all your time it's like you're just focusing on trying to survive. But after I moved to Australia, and like the basic things exist, like for example the food, the safety, all these things, it's already exist. Your energy, it's you focus more on like how you can add values to other people, how you can add values to the country you are living in, like how you can try to help people around you. So for example, when after I moved to Australia, I have passion about tutoring a lot. So I started to add like values to the community I'm living in. I help a lot of people around Australia, like not just in the city I'm living in, like in New South Wales and other states, trying to like add values to them, for example. And this is like very important. And this is exactly what TPB, I think, trying to achieve, like add a win for everyone, add a win to the country, because those refugees is not just skilled or talented, it's also full of energy, and this energy, it can be very helpful for the community or the country they are moving in. Also, like for the company I'm working with currently, which is Iress, like all this energy you are trying to focus on make your job done very quickly and make it like improve that, try to add value also to this company. And so yes, like this is exactly, it's about values you are focusing on in like yourself, in the company you are working with, and in the country you moved to.
That's amazing. You are the personification of the win-win-win, Tariq, and Australia is lucky to have you. So also your laugh and your energy always gets me in a very positive mood. So thank you so much for that. And for anyone who has watched TVB's video, I always like cry at the point where Tariq's like, I do video editing, ha ha ha. It's that point that like triggers this thing where he's just so excited about being able to thrive and no longer survive. So thank you so much, Tariq. Now, Andrew, if I can come back to you, we've just heard from one of your amazing employees. You've now hired 5 software engineers through the program, and you're looking at hiring more and building pipelines both in Australia and the UK. What sort of changes from an employer perspective on that hiring in terms of, you mentioned timelines before, but in terms of assessing skills and actually qualifying the candidates to be fit for the role?
For us, it's the same process. So we are not presenting some downgraded interview process because of the situation that these candidates are in. We are applying the same standards to chase for this top quartile talent that we're keen to find, and that's what we're finding within the ranks of TBB. And so it's the same software engineering standards, it's the same testing, it's the same interview process. You described some of the shorter or lengthy processes that might be involved in video one-way or video two-way interview processes. So for us, it's no different, and that we would apply the same approach to a domestic recruit or to an international recruit wherever they ended up working for us. The process once we've employed a TBB candidate is also no different. We already have a diversified employee base. It's very multicultural. We see diversity as a true asset to building software and working within teams. And so Tarek and Durar and others, and Shatha soon, will be within international communities that sit at all Iress offices to be one of the team.
Fantastic. So I'll take this opportunity to pivot now to Shatha, who is in Jordan and is Iress's newest hire, and take this opportunity to thank you, Andrew, on a global stage for being the first, being the pioneer, and really being such a strong advocate for this by not only speaking about it, but continually recruiting this talent, which you've identified is remarkable. So turning now to Shatha, it's so great to have you join us. You are in Jordan at the moment. You are looking at moving into your new role at Iress. Can you tell us a little bit about what this opportunity means to you?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having this meeting today. This opportunity actually means a lot to me. Working with a reputable and international company would enable me strengthening and sharpening my skills as a full stack developer in both sides, front end and back end. It is a so precious opportunity to learn, grow, develop, and use the technology to add value to the others, as Tarek has already mentioned. And really so impressed by how Iress software is used by more than 10,000 businesses and 500,000 users around the world, which is so amazing. And as Andrew has already mentioned, I'm really impressed by the diversity of the employees that Iress has. They have employees from different countries and backgrounds, cultures. It's so amazing, and I cannot wait to start my journey with Iress.
Well, you're amazing, and good luck on the journey. I know that visas and mobility are happening in this crazy world, so all the best to you, and thank you to everyone from Iress. We're going to switch now to a different industry, and that is to the meatworks industry. So we have joining us Wayne Shaw, who is the General Manager of Harvey Industries Group. They are producers of Harvey beef, fine quality, sustainably raised meat in Western Australia. So Wayne, thank you so much for joining us again, being an advocate and a spokesperson for displaced talent mobility. You have hired butchers through TBB. I think there are 3 on the ground, but you are in the process of hiring 20 more. Can you tell us a little bit more about what motivated you to hire through TBB and what advice you'd give to other employers considering labour mobility for refugees?
Marina, yeah, it's pretty simple, really. Harvest Road Group, and it's our parent company, and Harvey Industries Group operate a large beef factory in Western Australia, and we're in a regional part of Western Australia, which is a currently a booming mining industry and pretty vibrant economy, but that comes with its challenges, and that includes difficulties around employment and getting enough skilled staff. And we employ hundreds of staff, and many of those are skilled butchers. We also employ tradesmen, managers, accountants, engineers, but we need a lot of butchers. And I guess Talent Beyond Boundaries gave us an avenue to source labour in places we didn't previously think was possible. And really, it's I guess it was the fact that TPB enabled us to do that in a manner that was very similar to if we were employing people locally. The process is basically that, as was previously explained, that we interview the staff over Zoom or Teams. We do the same assessment of their skills that we would do if we were employing locally, and then we work with Talent Beyond Boundaries to take care of the visa side of things. So we do also employ people internationally, including butchers, through other government visa programs, and we've found that with the assistance of Talent Beyond Boundaries, this particular program is certainly no more difficult. In fact, a lot easier because of the assistance given to us by TPB, and yeah, it's certainly proven to be successful. And as mentioned, this year we're planning to step the program up to employ 20 butchers, and that's really going to go a long way to meeting our labour shortage needs. So we think it's great, and as was also mentioned by others, we think it's pretty great that you can do something good for a few people and their families and really just make a really positive change in the world. So we get pretty excited about that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Wayne. And just picking up on that final point there about benefit to families, we've got Ali, who is one of the star butchers at Harvey Beef, and was the first person that Harvey Beef hired. International opportunities don't just benefit the employee, but their whole family. You've got 2 little kids. You have hopes and dreams for yourself, but also for your children. So can you tell us what this has meant for your family and what life in Australia has been like compared to where sort of you came from?
First of all, hello everybody. I'm Ali Wawi, the first butcher hired by Harvey in a regional area. I'll just two words for how life used to be in Lebanon. 2 weeks or more than that, they got us a new policy at work for the animals. It says no pain, no fear. And these are the 2 words that you will always feel while you are living in a host country as a refugee. In Lebanon, you're not finding anything about your future. You don't think about the future because you have to live each day by day, maybe each hour by hour, because at any time you're living without a work permit, you're living without a residence permit, you have no rights at all. So at any moment you might be under a pain. It's not essentially a physical pain, it's an emotional pain. You're always in a fear situation that you will get caught and you will be returned back to Syria. As a Syrian refugee, for me, my life in Lebanon was really very, very hard. I couldn't have work. I couldn't work legally. I couldn't have a driver license. I couldn't even drive a motorcycle in Lebanon. So life in Lebanon, it was really very, very hard for me. And once I was looking on Facebook, and there was an aid for TPB, and then when I enter to that aid, I find that I really match the criteria. I have a good experience in butchering. I'm very good in English, and after that, I applied to them. For any refugee who's living in a host country, all what he is thinking about is just to leave the country, really leave the country. It's a very, very, very hard life there. As I mentioned before, you can't work, you can't live. Sometimes you will get harassed even if you get out of your home. Like today, Lebanon is very hard for the Lebanese to live in. They're waiting on petrol stations, they're waiting on bakeries to get their food, they're waiting on supermarkets. So imagine how much it is hard for a refugee who is living in Lebanon. After I arrived to Australia, I used to have one kid before I came, and now I have another one. She's an Aussie. For my biggest kid, as in that she loves Australia a lot. She met one of her friends. She's 80 years old, and she's called Ken. Imagine that you're having a kid, she's only 6 years old, and having a friend of 80 years old. All what you're gonna hear is blah, 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 talking all the day. Asinat is one of the best students at the school. Yesterday, one of the teachers, she told me and her mom that she's very proud of her. She took her book of stories and went to the school and read it for her kids. She's the first kid in the school that finishes her math book 2 months before the school finished. Nowadays, I can believe that for our kids, I can see that they are making their future by themselves. I don't have to think and fear about their future, about my future, about my job, about what's coming in the future. My other kid who was born here in Australia, she's only 1 year and 3 months old. And every time she sees something and she looks at it, she say, "What's that?" She's only 1 year and 3 months. My other kid, she's going to ballet dancing. She's going to library sessions. Although she's only 7 years old, but she's the one who's now trying to build her future. Traveling here is not just an opportunity to work. TBB and Harvey Beef, they didn't just give me an opportunity to work or leave Lebanon. No, they gave me another big family, as I before mentioned to TBB and for Harvey Beef. They just give me another chance of life. And I'm going to thank them again, because they also, not only they bring me, but they bring my other brother. And we're a small family here in Harvey, in a regional area that's getting bigger. And we're getting another family member around 2 weeks ago. So I'm really very thankful for what you have done to me. And I can tell you that you have just given us another way of living, another way of giving for us, for you, and for our employers. Thank you a lot.
Thanks, Ali. That is a wowie domination of Harvey in Western Australia. But thank you for those really inspiring and powerful words. And I think with that, I am passing to David Crawford, partner at Fragomen, for some closing remarks on the business case.
Thank you, Marina, and hello, everybody. Lovely to be with you. Just by way of context, I do have an Australian accent, but I am in fact a lawyer in Canada. And I am what we call the relationship partner for Fragomen with TBB and UNHCR. And it's a great privilege and pleasure to work and to have been working with for them in preparation for this and for the other things that we do. David Manicom at the commencement spoke about a couple of things. One is the supply and one is the demand. And we as a firm, for those who don't know, Fragomen is a firm that specializes in immigration work, mainly with employers. We help employers move people into 170 countries. And their two primary requirements are that the people have the right skills and they can move in a timely and predictable fashion. And if they can do those things, they can fill jobs. And if they can fill jobs, then the employers can meet their commercial commitments. And that's what ultimately will drive the success of this important program. The work that we've been doing, so I'll broadly speak about two things, and I won't be very long. But at the first level, there is an immigration process that's been touched upon by Marina. And we're currently working with TBB in Canada, the UK, and Australia. And credit to those countries, because policy concessions have been made to make things more possible so that we can make this work. but it's going to be the fact that even though we currently have something in the order of 700 matters underway, potentially the demand would be much greater. And given what, more than 80 million people who are displaced, over 30,000 people in the talent catalogue, that supply is significant. And how do we try and make this work? With that in mind, we TBB and Fragomen are working on processes to facilitate applications, particularly with the greater use of technology, which will include APIs, so that we can quickly convey information, pull it together, prepare applications, and file them with the governments who are going to decide those applications. And in that way, it's the only way that we can think of that we can scale the work and hopefully increase what would be 500, for example, for Canada into a more significant number. But the second part of my comment is that there is a much broader project and a challenge for all of us. The more countries get involved in this, the better, and this has been touched upon before. An example is that I've got a colleague, Bo Cooper, who works in Washington, D.C., and he's working with Mary Louise and Bruce Cohen, whom John mentioned earlier, on negotiations with the US administration for finding pathways into the United States. Can you imagine what a positive message it will be if we can establish those pathways, those legal pathways for people to get to the US, a message to so many countries, and we believe it can happen. I think also Marina referenced the fact that New Zealand and Ireland and Portugal and Belgium and also some Nordic states are countries where we're preparing material on, so that we can explore the possibilities of establishing pathways into these countries. And just to state the obvious, and forgive me for not saying so, we all assume that a legal process is a pretty straightforward thing, that most countries will have a process. Well, it's not the case. And I don't think it's an accident, for example, that Canada and Australia and the UK have jumped in here. Not only did they have a legal mechanism to allow migration, they've made additional policy changes to facilitate this pathway, and they've got a history of welcoming people from resettlement countries. So it's not a million miles from their mentality of how they approach immigration. It may not be so easy in other places, but the more the merrier, as it were, that the greater success that we can have collectively in what we're trying to achieve, the support of business saying this is an important source of skilled labor for us, not now, but not just now, but into the future, then will become scalable. So my part of this is to say thank you to those businesses with whom we are already working in finding a solution for these people through the pathways. Also to encourage those of you who are thinking about it to ask some questions. We're more than happy to talk about what the pathways look like and with TB meet your skills needs. And finally, at some point, perhaps with us become advocates of what we think is a very worthwhile project in all the ways that David Manicom put in his invitation and in his opening remarks. So with that, I will conclude. I'll pass back to you, David.
Thank you, David, and thank you to Fragomen for all the work that your company has been doing to expand our work. We have a little bit of time for questions and comments. David, can you give me a nod if you can hear me clearly? Yeah,
I can hear.
Thank you. If you do want to intervene, use the reactions button at the bottom to raise your hand. We have some interesting comments in the chat, but I'd like to have a live discussion. So anyone who wants to raise their hand, please do so, and we'll ask you to turn on your camera and speak. While we're waiting for people to do that, there's one comment in the chat that I wondered if Talent Beyond Boundaries you could comment on, and that was the issue of gender balance in the talent catalog. Is there something you could comment on in that regard?
Take that one, Marina. Hi everyone, I'm Steph Cousins. I'm the CEO of Talent Beyond Boundaries. We certainly do have, it's probably about 15% women on the talent catalogue signed up, so there is a gender imbalance. We do try and quite proactively engage with companies that are looking to hire women as one strategy for ensuring that there's a bit more equity in the hiring mix. That said, we all have to keep in mind that families are moving through this program, so it's certainly not the case that more men are receiving a durable solution than women. Our stats are basically gender balanced when you look at the number of men, women, and boys and girls going through the program. But we are trying to work, for example, in kind of women-dominated industries. We've got a major program with the NHS and various hospitals in the UK around nurses, and generally working with corporates that are looking to find talented women. So yeah, there's plenty of talent, and I must say the talent coming out of Afghanistan, there is a lot of women, really amazing women. So yeah, that's definitely something that we're proactively looking at.
And if I may, we have had a lot of conversations and intakes with candidates whose husbands or brothers have registered to the talent catalogue, and they haven't because they think that it's more likely that an engineer would get a job rather than a HR professional, for example. But in one case, we had dual opportunities for an engineer and a HR professional, and the HR professional got a job first, and so she's leading. So it was sort of, you know, globally there are IT and engineering shortages, so it's just an encouragement and awareness that there are shortages across all industries. And so we, even on individual intakes, encourage people to spread the word based on their occupation, not their gender, and perhaps their gender roles in country.
Thanks very much, Marina. I understand there's some hands up, but I can't see them. I'm gonna fix that technical glitch. And while I am, I think that Adele Yergan at VMware, cutting edge company, might have had a comment or a question. Adele?
Thanks, David. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Too many microphones to select here. I really just have to say that this has been very exciting for both myself personally in the talent acquisition side of a software company that's growing, and finding the opportunity to look for talent and look at talent skill-based. And one of the things as a company we've been really focused on, along with diversity, is also non-traditional skills. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to lead in the industry, to take this wonderful talent pool and look at the skills that are sort of leading these folks to a new life, and also looking at the future of work. That's the other thing that we're trying to balance, I think, as we navigate talent evolution, and how companies really sort of tap in and build that sort of pact with skilled individuals to help them move and grow their business. Is sometimes it's not necessarily a particular country that we need them in. We can work globally, as we've found in this pandemic era. And so I think that could also create opportunities to not be limited by office locations, not be limited by certain particular countries where we operate in. Let's find the pathways that are going to be the most fluid and help sort of move things quickly and agilely. And I think that's where we can come in as corporations, to be smart and innovate and open-minded, to really work together and partner. So I'm very excited about the opportunities. I'm almost like, where's the first step? But hopefully we can all work together to find out what those steps are as companies to really tap in and support each other and make this happen on a global scale.
Thank you very much. That was just the right thing to say, because we will at the end be segueing neatly to next steps and all the follow-ups. Some hands up. I can't get to all of you, but David Carmichael, I think you're with CGI. David?
Yeah, hi David. It's good to see you. You can hear me, right?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just by way of some background, so I work for CGI, which is a Canadian headquartered IT company of a reasonable global size. It's good to see some familiar faces on the call. Just from a CGI point of view, it's more commentary than a question. We were invited to participate in this by initially by David Crawford at Fragomen, it really appealed to me, not only professionally, as the director of the global mobility function, the COE within CGI, but also personally. In another lifetime, when I was a much younger individual than I am now, I had the opportunity to work for a peacekeeping mission in the Middle East. I still have extended family in the Middle East, so I kind of felt like this was something that would work for me professionally, but also personally. Just by way of context, and if you think about the numbers that Melissa was sharing for Canada, CGI hasn't hired anybody yet, but I'm really pleased to say that as it stands, as of right now, we're in the process of interviewing 25 candidates, and that's just on our first trawl of CVs that we got from TBB. And I'm absolutely convinced that we'll make this work for CGI. And if we can make it work for CGI, there's no reason why it can't work for anybody else. So that's more commentary than a question.
Thank you, David. I have Rianne and then Francesca. Rianne, if you can introduce yourself.
Hello, yes, I'm Rianne Wells. I work for the Department of Health and Social Care, and I'm delighted to say that we've been working with TBB, and in the last few weeks we've had our first cohorts of nurses come to the UK. And my question is this: what do you think, for TBB, what do you think the one thing is that is needed to sort of turbo drive this? It feels like everyone sees it as a clear win for all concerned, and sort of certainly from the experience of the NHS, we've had such a lot of positive feedback and a lot of sort of demand to sort of to be there and to sort of to utilize this route. What's the one thing that would make the difference, do you think, from making this, a usual route of recruitment rather than an unusual route of recruitment?
A brilliant question, and great to see you, Rianne. So Rianne was one of the early adapters, and we are now, by the end of the year, going to have 95 nurses travel and work in the NHS and in private hospitals in and around England, and we're replicating in Scotland shortly. I think that to turbocharge this is to scale this as a solution, and that doesn't involve only TBB. From our perspective, particularly in England, we know that there are already organisations who are facilitating international nursing recruitment. So how can we adapt their systems, their processes to take on displaced talent mobility? One of the key things for healthcare in particular, and it may apply to other industries, is that often candidates come ready with their pre-registration, their English tests, etc. For refugee candidates, they basically need a conditional offer in order to invest in things like paying for English tests and registration and getting support from their employers to do that. So that reverse flip is something that's quite unfamiliar to employers, that their job offer is now then the trigger for all the other mobility pieces. So lessons like that and embedding TBB's processes into recruitment organisations, into in-house recruitment teams, and having the source of TBB's talent be in the Middle East and there be a direct connection, for me, is probably how we turbocharge. And it's something that we've already started to speak about very openly with the UK, with NHS professionals who are the recruiters for the NHS, how we can tack on this source of talent and this talent stream onto what already exists, because the capacity, the resources are there. So we are building evidence, we are learning from our perhaps oversight and bolstering them up to make sure that it is just business as usual.
I would just jump in here if I can add to what Marina said. Hi everyone, my name is Patrick O'Leary. I'm the Director of Canada at TBB. Just to answer that question as well, I think we are turbocharging at the moment. As Marina referenced, we've got 320 durable solutions we've offered. The majority of them have been in the last 6 to 12 months. For us now, if we hit those numbers in Canada, the 500, the numbers in the UK, the numbers in Australia, that's how we turbocharge it. So it's really now for the next 12 months to hit those numbers and keep them going.
Could I just add, I'm going to say almost the same thing again, but, you know, we're about empowering refugees through their skills, but we're also about empowering private enterprise, business, the people, you people who are on this call now. All of a sudden, you don't act, what turbocharges us? We don't have, the pathways are there now. The processes are there now. The data, the skills are there now. You don't need anybody to tell you what to do. You are empowered. You turbocharge this. So that's what turbocharges it. It's an employer-led solution. And if employers choose to, you can turbocharge it.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks, Rhian, for that great question. I wish I could take all the questions, but I'm going to take one last one. I'm giving the priority to companies, but there's lots of other good questions in the chat and lots of other hands up. And you should all feel free to write to us so we can answer your questions and start the conversation. I'm going to wrap the questions with Heidi Strawson. Heidi, I think you're from Accenture. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, that's right, David. Can you hear me?
I can, and if you're from Accenture, I just want to know how many hundreds or how many thousands Accenture is hiring. Thank you.
I don't have that number at my fingertips. I'd love to tell you. Maybe we could follow up with that. I was delighted to see our logo included on the list, beamed up earlier, of employers who are seeking to ensure pathways for refugees. It's certainly something we're committed to at a global level, and it manifests itself differently country by country. The question I actually had was actually beyond an immediate self-serving interest, because I think I totally get, and it's been so well made today, that business case, company by company. What's the multiplier effect? What sort of systemic barriers exist such that companies could be investing and contributing beyond those immediate pathways that they could and should open up for people joining their headcount? Like, what do you need?
We would love to work with Accenture on this, Heidi. We've had actually some discussions a while ago about Accenture Development Program and maybe how that could be kind of utilized for this very issue. But yeah, there is a tier of, like right now we've got a tier of high quality, like super competitive candidates that can just go straight into work. But there's a whole group of candidates who maybe they don't have the English or whatever language they need to be competitive, or they don't have like an accredited skill, but they're in an accredited industry, so they need licensing or a pathway to licensing, or, you know, they've just kind of missed out on certain steps that would make them really competitive in the international job market. And I really think, I mean, this is probably the next step, because to be honest, there are a lot of people in that tier that can just go straight into work. But yeah, it opens up millions of people if you can start actually tailoring some of the investment in development and livelihoods to enable people to be on a pathway to a migration solution. And it makes so much sense with displaced people, because it's not a brain drain. I mean, you're investing in people who don't have rights in the country where they're operating. They're never able to contribute their capacity in the country where they're operating. I mean, everything that Tarek said and Ali said is true. You know, they're kind of tied up in survival rather than being able to make a contribution, and it's just such a waste of human potential. So investing in that category, you know, that group of people, to enable them to have a migration solution where they can make a contribution in a country where they have access to their rights, is just such a no-brainer. And it does need a development mindset, I think, and some really big thinkers and players like Accenture. So really keen to talk about that if that's something that Accenture wants to do.
We'd be really interested to explore what that might look like. Let's connect up.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Steph and Heidi. And I think one of my calls to companies would be, you know, US companies are used to solving big, complicated multinational and international problems. So rather than you asking us, we're happy to help convene all of the smart talent on this call and others to put the right structures together to really help lower the hurdles and raise the bridges. I'd love to continue.
Or David, sorry, can I just step in and add to the answer to that question, which is about structural impediments? I'm both a TBB employer and I'm on the board of TBB Canada, and I'm a small business. But big businesses like Accenture, the banks, and others have a seat at the table with government. And I think it's important for them to advocate for improving the pathways, reducing the time that it takes to process and adjudicate immigration, and to kind of get their heads out of the sand. At the same, on one side, governments are talking about structural labor issues and talent shortages, and on the other hand, they still impose barriers to pathways. So I think it's really critical that the larger organizations in our economies begin to advocate strongly. And of course, TBB can help with that. But in many cases, the companies are in an even better position than TBB. Just wanted to add that point. I think it's critical for us, particularly with the turbocharging idea, right?
Thank you very much, Tom. And it's good to hear business telling other business those things. I want to invite two very distinguished guests to give us some closing comments. First, Daphne Young-Dervais, Director of Peace and Prosperity at the International Chamber of Commerce. Daphne, so glad you could join us. Over to you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much, David. And I just like to thank everybody for such a wonderful discussion today. I think Sasha said at the beginning that, and several people have said, this is really a win-win-win solution. And I think the discussions and all the testimonies have really confirmed that. So I think forced displacement is an issue that's not going to go away. We heard that was a historic moment at this time, and unfortunately, it may well be several historic moments coming up in the next few years. So solutions, innovative solutions like this have to be found. And we have, as ICC, we have networks of companies and business associations in over 100 countries around the world, and business organizations working all kinds of sectors. And we see our networks in countries of origins, as well as neighboring countries and third countries. And we see the effect of forced displacement on the economies and societies in all these different categories. So we also see, because of the different sectors that we work in, a real need for skills and talent shortages, as already mentioned before. So we're really happy to have the opportunity to help use our business networks and connect them together with our links with governments to try and help scale up this solution, which really makes a lot of sense. So really a very big thanks to you, David, and to UNHCR, Talent Beyond Boundaries, and Fragomen for this great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daphne. And last but very much not least, I'm so pleased that we could be joined at the end of our call by Gillian Triggs, Assistant High Commissioner for Protection at UNHCR. Gillian.
Well, thank you very much, David, and greetings, everybody. In fact, I was really pleased that I've heard almost all of the discussion over the last, certainly the last hour and a quarter. So it's been very inspiring for me and all my colleagues at UNHCR. Thank you so much to Fragomen and to Talent Beyond Boundaries for joining us on this really fruitful and exciting exercise. We thank you for your support through the business community. But we do so very, very particularly because we see this as the way of the future for the people we serve. And let me explain why. Firstly, as you may know, we reported earlier this year that there are 82.4 million people in the world who are forcibly displaced, either across boundaries or in their own countries. This is a huge problem, and one of our key objectives is to ensure that they are not just a legal status, they're not a definition under the Refugee Convention, which of course we celebrate this year at its 70th anniversary, but they are people with human rights and with a need for self-respect and for self-reliance and for the ability to rebuild their lives. That's what we are trying to do. And we know that work really is the key to rebuilding those lives and rebuilding self-respect. But let me explain in particular why I see this as so important. You'll all be aware that we're in a time of great instability. We have protracted conflicts globally. Afghanistan entering its 5th decade. Hopefully we'll see a period of peace. Syria, Northern Mozambique, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Venezuela. I can go on. But we are seeing environments in which it is not possible for refugees to return home. Voluntary repatriation is simply not a realistic option. Similarly, resettlement is for a very tiny number of people. This last year, through UNHCR, we were able to, with, of course, the support of our resettlement countries, 26 of them, we were able to achieve only 23,000 resettlements out of 1.4 million people that we'd identified as being in particular need. So what I'm trying to say is that if you like, the traditional solutions that we always strive to achieve at UNHCR, resettlement and voluntary repatriation in safety, are becoming relatively less and less available as solutions. And we must look at the critical question of integration in the societies in which they're finding protection. And that means, of course, access to work. The very exciting aspect of the win-win-win solutions that you're all working on is that it provides a regular legal pathway. Although, of course, we try to persuade governments, ministers, government officials that seeking asylum is a legal right. There's no doubt at all that at community levels, the voting public, citizens of countries will much prefer a legal, regular pathway that for them is manageable and under some level of control. And that is why I think we see what are called in UN language complementary pathways, but education, community sponsorship, family reunion, and most particularly, and I say that advisedly, labour mobility. This provides something that voting publics, the communities that we all live in, will see the advantage of. And I know that when I'm speaking, when I'm on mission now a lot, wherever I go, when I talk to senior ministers about the opportunity for labour mobility or for filling employment gaps within their own communities, that's when they will become interested. And I think that's where the potential lies, because it brings a respectful response. And I think that the work that you're doing, and I would like to see it further scaled up. And I very much appreciate Tom's remarks about structural impediments. There are many structural impediments. Visas take so long to achieve. We do need to work more closely with government, and many of you will be able to do that. And of course, a point that I think he was getting to is that the business community are good advocates. Of course, the best advocates are Wawi and Tarek. I mean, they tell the story, and they inspire us. But we need them, along with the business community, to be talking to our leaders, to the people who can make that kind of difference. Can I make one point, and that's that I very much like the use of the word talent in Talent Beyond Boundaries, because as you will, I'm sure, appreciate, overwhelmingly, the majority of people we seek to serve and support don't have skills. They've never had work. They have very, very little in the terms of education. That is, and unfortunately, a sad fact of life. And what I find inspiring about many of the initiatives and matching that you're engaged in is that you are focusing on the talent that refugees and displaced people can bring. And if you'll excuse an example, I was recently in Croatia, where a transit country, of course, towards Europe. And if I can mention one company, IKEA, and there they were taking people with very few skills, very little education, bringing them into the company, training them, and then sending them out into the community ready for work, or employing them within IKEA itself. And this is a model, of course, all over the world. But I think that that's very exciting. And another that I'd just like to share with you, I was in Malta not so long ago, which of course is a frontline state in the Mediterranean. And there is a wonderful Catholic priest, all on his own, very little money, with a sanctuary and a home for 100 or so youths, typically from North Africa. And he runs a program every day with the local community to help them draft their CVs to get their applications in to groups like the communities that you're all describing. So I think the idea its time has come. Let's turbocharge it if it's not already turbocharged, and let us use the solidarity that we have to advocate for all of the advantages that come with providing this enriching pathway for people so desperately in need of protection. So thank you all very much, and back to you, David.
Thank you, Gillian. We're just slightly past the bottom of the hour, so some of you probably should be on other calls or are proceeding to jump to them. We will be in touch with all of you after this call to give you the opportunity and information you need to start hiring refugees, and also to let us know if you wish to help build those ecosystems, those advocacy platforms, and those program implementation design factories to scale this up. So we will be in touch. Because I've said that, I can now leave the very last word, the call to action, with John Cameron of Talent Beyond Boundaries. John.
No pressure. Look, I imagine that many of you here, we're talking about international hiring, just to re-emphasize that. I imagine that many of you on this call already have experience giving jobs to refugees in your own country, and that is great. But despite the undoubted challenges that refugees can still face once they have settled in a new country, they are the lucky ones. The refugee crisis is not in Australia or Canada or the UK or the USA. The refugee crisis is in host countries where millions are trapped in impossible and hopeless limbos with no future. And as Gillian says, the status quo is not working. The number of refugees is growing every year. Change is needed. And there's a desperate need to find new pathways out in addition to normal humanitarian resettlement. TBB offers one such pathway. So even if you already hire refugees locally, you should also consider hiring refugees internationally. But the good news that we've presented to you today is that you don't have to justify this just as something you should do as a constructive response to a humanitarian crisis. You run businesses, and the good news is that this is just good business. Let's forget about the refugee label. We're talking about skilled people here, talented people here. We actually don't want you to hire through TBB just because someone's a refugee. If that's your sole motivation, just give money to UNHCR. That's a good thing to do. You should be doing it anyway. Come to us when you're looking for skills you are having a tough time finding locally. We will back ourselves to find what you're looking for because we have a massive pool of talent to draw from. 30,000 on our database alone, and literally millions in the regions where we work. We'll present you with a number of CVs that match your requirements and then assist you in running a normal, competitive hiring process. And you'll select the best candidates drawn from this huge pool of talent. So if you're interested, and like the employers you have heard from today, it's hard to imagine why you wouldn't be, please sign up here and tell us what jobs you want filled. Expression of interest. It's a smart thing to do, and you've got nothing to lose but your hiring backlog.